Oh wow, nice. They was like, "Do you want to leave or continue?"
Yes, yes. That and see, that's why we didn't hit record because we didn't want to throw you off on your interview because I knew it was gonna ask that question. Yeah.
Yes, that's my first time seeing that
Oh yeah, it does. It asks you that. Okay.
one.
So, Mr. Hartwell, I want to just thank you for taking the time to interview um, with me about the program. I'm so excited, most of all, that you have accepted the position with He Matters. But I know you well, and I know some of your abilities, but I want our parents to know who it is that will be working with their young men. So, if you're okay, I want to ask you a couple of questions just so they can understand who you are.
No problem.
Okay. First of all, I want to ask, what interests you about being a facilitator for He Matters mentoring program?
Well, firstly, it was you as the facilitator. I've come into contact with communities and schools while working at Web. I'm aware of from the kids and from my own observation where your heart is as far as type of populations that you can reach that a lot of teachers and educators are not able to reach. And, I remember the process by which you were selecting people for communities and schools and what you were going through. I remember walking through your room and seeing all the motivational quotes all over the wall and the things that I'm like, wow, I wish I had more time to discuss some of these issues in my classroom, right? We have a very rigorous curriculum in mathematics, and we're always having to we got to get to the standards, right? We got to address the standards, we got to address the objectives, but we have to also address the child. And I just took this as an opportunity to address the children directly, especially the young men. I know that myself, there was nothing particularly special about me that was any different than a lot of the other kids in my neighborhood, except the interaction of an older male mentor, in my case, my own father, put me in position to meet other males who were professional and black males that I looked up to and just saw a different way of the way they presented themselves than the way people were presenting in my neighborhood. So it's my goal to be able to do that for another young black male as it was done for me. And hopefully we can make some changes in our community.
Yes, absolutely. I am excited. So, what experiences have prepared you to be a mentor? I know that you spoke about your father and his leadership and impact and influence, but what experiences have you had that prepared you for being a mentor?
First of all, I would say just my upbringing. First of all, just real quick, the fact that I lived in two very different neighborhoods. I lived in deep East Baltimore um, for the first 10 years of my life, and the type of role models that we had in the neighborhood that I was very interested in aspiring to. I guess I was very impressionable. I wanted to be the baddest, hardest hitting, most womanizing already. That was my goal in life because the people I look up to, that's what they did. You know, my
Uh-huh.
uncles and them, my older cousins, they was hustlers. You know, they had money in their pocket, but what they did not have is professionalism or education or careers. Some of them had jobs from time to time, but it wasn't really, they weren't career men, they weren't businessmen. And so that's not what I aspired to.
Mhm.
And moving to North Carolina and seeing how kids already in middle school and early high school were already talking about what college they wanted to go to. I want to go to Carolina. I want to go to Duke. I want to play for state. And they were already talking about those things, and those were conversations that I had never been engaged in. But engaging in the conversation made me realize, like, wow, we don't talk about this in the hood. Like, we weren't
Mhm.
talking about this. These conversations, we thought that this was a not available to us. We didn't know these opportunities existed until we started having those conversations. And it changed my life. It changed my life because I actually started considering, like, wow, I could actually go to college. I could actually, I could actually be a businessman and walk around in a suit and look professional. That just wasn't my idea for myself. But my experience was like having living in those two different neighborhoods. It's like it's all about exposure. You never know what you could be or what you could aspire to or what your skill set might be well suited for. I know people in the hood who could have done all types of things much better than myself, more well spoken, more clever, faster of wit, but they use it in the avenues that they find available to them.
That's
And
right.
so I realized that when I took some of those things and started putting them in an academic setting, started putting myself in programs and signing up for internships and things like that, that the world was my oyster. It was so many opportunities and things that I could possibly do that I felt like nobody else knew about, and I really wanted to share that. And lastly, I just want to say that going out here, out here in this world on my own, I, I I went to the military and I got to see about how the transition from boys to men, for myself as well as the people around me. Going to college, that experience, as far as the finding yourself, the balancing between trying to have a social life and trying to take care of business, all these things really shaped and had an impact on who I was. Even a near death experience in the military really kind of gave me a new lease on life and how important it is that you make your mark while you're here, because life is so short. Tomorrow is not promised to any of us. And I want to make sure that when I leave this earth, that I leave an impression on the earth behind me, that I try to help somebody and I try to pull somebody else up. So I just feel like the culmination of those experiences that God put in my life just put me in a position where I really want to give back, because I feel so blessed for where God has brought me.
All right. Thank you for sharing. Um, Tell us what, or tell the audience, the parents, what you consider to be the essential elements of effective teaching when it comes to young boys, and how you may support their development, or how you plan to support their development.
A great question. I'm reminded of a quote. I don't know. I wish I knew who said it. I may need to look that up. But the quote that I heard in my teacher training was, students don't care how much you know unless they know how much you care. So the first thing is, I say, before you can teach somebody, you got to establish a certain rapport where they actually think that you're not just flaunting your knowledge in front of them, that you're actually trying to give them a gift that will be useful for their lives, that you have an objective in mind and that you have a program in mind that you want them to subscribe to for their own benefit. It's almost like self-preservation kicks in. If this doesn't really appeal to me, if this is not going to change my life, like this is not going to help me basically make some money some kind of way, it's going to help me make money or make my life better, then what's the real point? So to make it relevant to them, I feel like is essential element in teaching them, and let them know that there's coming from a place of one who really is concerned about their well-being. I'm taking my time to go through these concepts, even something as abstract as mathematics. You're not going to be solving equations in your everyday life in your neighborhood. The point is for you to learn the type of mentality that will have you put together the pieces of your life and the variables of your life, manipulate those in a way that will get you to a
Come
desired
on.
solution. So
Yes.
it's not about the mathematics itself. It's not about the numbers. It's about the mentality and the way of thinking, the way of organizing your thoughts and your ideas, because life is an equation and we're constantly rearranging it in order to isolate different pieces that we're trying to accomplish. And to get them to really buy into that in such a way that they can really get with it. Now, I could say that your operations and math, you got to be able to add, subtract, multiply, and divide. And as far as your social studies and your English, you got to be able to read. But if they're not relevant to you, if that hasn't been made that that's important to you, you're not going to apply yourself to learn those operations or to actually try to read on your own and become and to master those concepts. So the first thing is, before you get into the concept, you got to make it relevant. Why is it that we're doing this? And so once we can get that established, and then then we can get into the actual nuts and bolts of what we're teaching.
Okay. All right. Um, what are some skills that you feel are important for young men to learn? I know you've had quite a bit of experience, at the hall, walking the halls and at JF Webb High School, and, interacting with these young men. But, just looking back over the last couple of years, what do you feel like some skills that are important for young men to learn?
I would say above all, it's discipline. And I think most of the time when young men hear discipline, it means that they're in trouble. So they associate discipline meaning it's just a consequence, but the consequence is not. That's not what discipline is about.
Okay.
To learn the discipline to say that you cannot always go with every impulse that comes into your mind. You can't say every word that comes into your mind to say. You have to filter. You have to filter those things. You got to filter your behaviors. You have to filter your words in such a way that they're appropriate for the context, right? So the discipline of being able to control one's own self, I think that's so important. You're not going to feel like it sometimes. God knows we don't feel like getting up for work every day. We don't always feel like hearing what the people in our lives have to say to us, and we could be rude to them, and we could ignore them. We could put our fingers in our ears and go la 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 la, but is that going to be conducive to the relationship, right? So the point of the matter is you got to be able to control those impulses, and I feel like a lot of males in particular, they get in trouble with that because they let their feelings dictate everything that's happening. However they feel, that's what it is. If I'm angry, I'm gonna be mean. If I'm sleepy, I'm gonna take a nap right now in the middle of class.
Mm-hmm.
But to be able to be in control of those impulses, that discipline. Another thing I would say is authority. We don't like authority. No one likes authority. From the beginning of time, teenagers been rebelling against authority. That's just a thing. It's not particular to males in particular or particular to any race or creed. People don't like to be told what to do. But you have to at some point recognize that there are people who are in positions of authority over us. And if we don't defer to that authority, there's no end to the consequences that can bring to us. The penal system is full of people who, for whatever reason, did not or they failed to comply with those who are in authority. Now, whether or not the people in authority are right or wrong, unfortunately, that's not always of the greatest consequence in the middle of the situation. It might be that you have to defer to my authority right now until you get home to tell your parent, somebody to advocate for you. You might have to defer to the authority of another teacher so you can get to another teacher who can talk to them adult to adult, but you don't have the right to engage in authority as though y'all are peers. You don't have the right. And no matter how you feel about it or how passionate you are about your opinion, you have to recognize that authority is in place for a reason. And there's a way to go about voicing your opinion. There's a way to go about getting your point across. And there's a way to speak to people to get across what it is that you have to say. So I would say the discipline of controlling oneself and the idea that we have to respect the authorities that are in place.
Very well said. Absolutely. Um, and what do you feel would be the greatest challenge with working in this mentor program or any mentoring program?
Oh, the greatest challenge of working in any mentoring program, any teaching program, I would even say in being a parent, is the fact that you are going to win some and you're going to lose some. There are going to be some losses. There's going to be some
Mhm.
disappointments. There's going to be some days where you feel like what you're doing is of no effect. There's gonna be some days when you feel like everybody hates you, like all my kids. At some point, I'm like, none of them like me, and I gotta deal with that, right? I gotta deal with that. And there'll be other days when I'll be their favorite person in the world. But I can't let those days when no one likes me and those days when my kids are going crazy and doing things that I told you a million times that's gonna cause you harm. I can't let that make me throw my hands up and be like, all right, then do what you want. I can't allow that to make me callous to the point where I'm no longer going to extend myself or make myself vulnerable for the disappointment and the hurt of someone making decisions and choices that's going to hurt themselves. Even though you try to rescue them from the fire, sometimes people are determined to go back. People oppose their own selves. And the same thing is with parents. Parents or guardians, there's no class or no training that's formalized and mandatory for every parent or guardian who's raising a child, which means they come in with all kind of ways of their own. They come in with all kinds of bad habits, bad exposures. They're making bad decisions themselves. They're not following through. They're not paying attention in some cases. And there's some things that, that's the responsibility of the parent or the guardian. And as much as we would like to, sometimes I have wanted to take the wheel. I
Yes.
wanted to take the wheel from some of these parents and guardians. Like, nah, man, I'll just do it. Let me just have your child. Let me just have your child and raise. You're not raising them, And it's very disappointing when that's an obstacle that we can't really do anything about. We
Right.
can try to partner with parents and guardians, and we can encourage them, and we can even tell them the truth about their children. But sometimes they don't want to hear it, and even more times they're not trying to change. So the biggest challenge is being able to persevere and continue giving your best self every day, regardless of the outcome. Man, you might save one out of
Yeah.
seven, but that one is gonna make it worth it. If you're able to see that one succeed, you got to be okay with that. You got to count your wins, count it as a blessing, and pray for those that you tried to help that you realize that you cannot.
And you're absolutely right. And one of the hardest things when you're passionate about this work that we do is one, having to be able to establish your boundaries and understanding that you can't want it worse than the individual that you're trying to help or the family that you're trying to help. You can't want it worse than they do or more than they do. And then personalizing the loss or the failures. When you see one fall by the wayside and you've done everything you can do, like sometimes you will lose sleep behind that. That was probably one of the most difficult things that I've had to do. And so now, and then for me, it was like that immediate gratification. Like I wanted that change for any child that I was working with to happen right then. And a wise woman once told me, you won't see it right away. It'll be years down the road. They'll come back and say, you remember when you did this, and you remember how you helped me, or I never forget. It's those moments that I'm actually walking into now because it's, a few years, students been gone and they come back. So I realized that even when it felt like I was losing or they wasn't listening, they really were. And so, yeah, that's probably one of the most difficult things to any helper in this field. Teaching, education, mentoring, all of that. It's just understanding that you got to empower them for themselves. But thank you so much for taking the time out to just talk with me, to let our parents know who's going to be coming on board on the scene. I'm so excited to have a male to come in and work with the program. Our young men have been, longing for it for a long time. But as we bring this interview to a close, are there any remarks, anything you want to say to the parents, to our prospective students that are going to be enrolling into He Matters this year? Again, I'm so excited because all last year everything was virtual, and we all know how virtual went for everybody last year. So just to be back on the scene face to face again, I'm so excited. But I just want to close and I'm giving you the opportunity to say whatever it is that you want to say.
I wanna end on a high note, if you would let me end on a high note. It's a funny story. When I was a fairly new teacher, and like you, I wanted to see some immediate results.
Yes.
I always kind of felt like the teachers that I had in school, to be frank, I felt like they was probably lames when they was in school. Like I could see you getting bullied, right? I could see that you weren't the popular type when you was in school. So I was kind of like, when they see me, when I get in the classroom, when I get an opportunity, they're gonna be like, oh, okay, he cool. So I'm gonna follow suit and do everything he said,
Mhm.
and I'm gonna get right because I like this guy, right?
Right.
I feel like some of my teachers wasn't likable. But anyway, my second year teaching, I had a young man. His name was Jermaine. He was in Virginia, and Jermaine, he came to school with no materials. He had no paper, no pencil. He just walked in as if the world owed him something. He sat there. The girls loved him now. It was the star of the show. And he didn't
Uh-huh.
hardly talk. He just sat back cool and quiet. He was a rapper. He just sat back cool and quiet. One day, Jermaine asked me, could he go to the restroom? I said, of course you may. I gave him a pass. I didn't see Jermaine again for like 2 weeks. He said, can I go to the bathroom? And I didn't see him no more for like 2 weeks. So when I'm in the hallway, when he decided to come back to school, I saw Jermaine and I said, Jermaine, what are you doing? He said, what you talking about? I said, man, you asked me to go to the bathroom 2 weeks ago. Not only did you not come back that day, but I haven't seen you since. his face was so shocked. He was like, all right, man, I'm gonna come to class. Not only did this young man come to class, he came to class, he asked me for a paper and pencil, he started doing his work. He was like a complete genius. He was a genius. He
Mhm.
ended up he had a straight A semester the next semester. He was my first like mentee as a teacher. He had a straight A semester. He joined the debate team. He was awesome. The boy was like he was walking on water, and he graduated. He ended up not going to college because his GPA was so low from freshman and sophomore year that he couldn't make that up. In that last year, he was already a junior. So we had junior and senior year together. The point of the matter is, what Jermaine told me afterwards, he was like, I was like, what made the difference, man? What made the difference with you that made you start doing your work? He was like, man, for real, I wasn't coming back, period. I was about to drop out. When you didn't see me for 2 weeks, in my mind, I had already dropped out. And I only came back to make a sale. When you saw me in the hallway, the point of the matter is when I recognized, like, man, this dude really noticed that I wasn't here. That was the point. It wasn't about my
Yes,
teaching strategy.
yes,
It
yes.
wasn't about anything I presented. It was about the fact that I noticed and I was hot. I'm like, man, why you do me like that? You got me looking crazy. If somebody asked me where you were, I'm like, you went to the bathroom 2 weeks ago. I don't know what to tell you, right? But it was the fact that I remembered that I was paying attention, that he just wanted to know that he was significant, that his presence was missed in my classroom. And that's what I want to bring to every young man and every young woman that I encounter. I want you to know
Yes,
that you matter.
yes,
That's why I love the name of this program. You matter to us.
yes.
And if you get missing, we care about that. We're going to miss you. We're going to ask about you. We're going to pursue you because we have love for you and we want the best for you. So that I just wanted to end on that note. He mattered, and so did the young men in this program. Thank you.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you so much. Again, parents, Mr. Hartwell, I'm so excited and we're just ready to get started. October the 14th. Yes, we are ready. Thank you so much for taking the time out.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Looking forward to it.
Yes. All right. Have